Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel, All Things Taylor, with yours truly, for Q&A Wednesday. Yeah, it's gonna be wicked. So I tried to find all of the questions that came from all my social media platforms over the last 2 weeks since I missed last week's Q&A Wednesday. And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much, guys. You all were so incredibly supportive while I was sick and sort of just recovering. My voice was just awful. There was no way you were going to understand me last week. So we're doing much better this week. Yay! So let's get right down to it. Yay! Okay. The first question comes from my YouTube channel. A fan asked me if I could pick a dream opponent for a mixed tag match, who would it be? I honestly don't really have like a dream mixed tag match opponent. But like if we talked about like current, I honestly, and I was not alone in this, like for years I had like fans and other wrestlers and creative people telling me this, so I know I wasn't alone. There was definitely a demand for it, but so I just find it funny. It's awesome. But I thought it would be really fun if I teamed up with a Fiend. There was people since my time at Ring of Honor telling me I would have been a great Sister Abigail character before, you know, she was actually like written. So I just thought that was like a really big compliment, especially seeing Alexa Bliss kill that role. It just makes me happy because I can see that she's putting the same effort I would have had I have been Sister Abigail. So I thought that was just really cool. So I guess my answer would have been the Fiend, because I think I would have done really well as like a creepy Sister Abigail sort of character, especially like growing up in a legit bona fide haunted house that was built in 1912. So it's like, I don't know, I had so much inspiration I could draw from, and just, I don't know, I just think it would have been really amazing. I hear noise going on, so I'm going to just quickly put some earplugs in. Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to try to get as clear audio as possible. I'm not able to go into my studio due to COVID restrictions, so we're making do. So I guess that would be the dream mixed tag partner, I guess, would be like the Fiend, just because I think I would have been like really cool as Sister Abigail, and I think that Alexa Bliss is doing an amazing job. So I don't know, I just think that's really cool. Okay, let's see. Another person on my YouTube channel who is like a diehard on this YouTube channel and, you know, is very interactive with me and other people on this channel asked me my thoughts about Tom Brady and the Super Bowl. It's very bittersweet for me, guys. For anybody that's new to my YouTube channel, All Things Taylor, I'm a diehard, born and raised Massachusetts girl. You can take me out of Boston, but you can't take the Boston out of me. So I'm a diehard Patriots, Bruins, and, you know, a Red Sox fan. Shout out to Justin Pedroia. He just announced his retirement after playing 17 seasons in the MLB, more than 1,500 games. I talked about it a little bit on my podcast, Talks with Taeler Hendrix. So I'm really excited to see what he does next with life after baseball. That's always a really big deal. So I wish him so much success. You know, the more athletes and stars that show a life after, I think it really helps people, especially when careers are cut short with, you know, without your say so, which happens a lot as a pro athlete. So I'm rooting for him to have as much success in life after baseball as he did in baseball. Um, Back to Tom Brady. My thoughts on Tom Brady, it's bittersweet, man. Because, you know, all over New England, we had the "In Brady We Trust" and shirts, and, you know, Brady and Belichick are like the dream GOAT team, you know. It's really sad. It's like the end of an era. I giggle at people like, "Oh, I don't like cheaters, so I can't root for the Buccaneers this year." And it's just like, were you there? Did you physically see Tom Brady deflating footballs? Like, get real, guys. Like, get real. Just come on. Stop being haters. Like, just because somebody says he did it doesn't mean that, you know, I don't know. It just makes me laugh. It's like, can you imagine Tom Brady being Tom Brady, being like, "Hey, Giselle, you're gonna have to watch the kids tonight because I'm gonna sneak into the equipment room before the game and I'm gonna deflate some footballs." Like, have you ever tried to accurately throw a deflated football? It's terrible. is terrible. I don't know. So that just immediately came to my mind when I read the question, my thoughts on Tom Brady, because I asked people on my Twitter today who you're voting for, Kansas City or Buccaneers. So so many people are like, "Oh, Mahomes, Mahomes, Mahomes." There's some for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, and then there's like tons of people are like, "Oh, I don't cheer for cheaters." Just makes me laugh so hard. Just imagine little like Tom Brady just walking deflating footballs. Like, are you serious? But so I'm not a hater. So I wish Tom Brady well. It's very bittersweet that he's not still with the Patriots, and it's also bittersweet not seeing the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Last year they weren't, this year they weren't. Hopefully we'll have like a really awesome rebuilding year. But I think it also kind of showed, poor Cam Newton, he just wasn't the same after he came back from COVID. But you can't really blame him for that. COVID's really affected a lot of people. And it also shows that, when you don't have enough tools at your disposal on your team, it's very hard to, pull things through, which is one of the biggest complaints of Tom Brady before he ended up leaving the Patriots for Tampa Bay. So I'm not necessarily rooting for Tampa Bay. I actually think Patrick Mahomes is extremely talented. Nesson, I'm looking at you guys. We need to be talking sports. I'm telling you, I'm calling you guys out on Twitter. But I'm not like not rooting for Tom Brady, so it's one of those things. It's just bittersweet, guys. It's bittersweet. Ugh. Next question. Someone asked me on here what my favorite video game would be. Okay, it's okay, guys. I didn't grow up with like the hip all kinds of like awesome top of the line stuff. Like I grew up with a lot of thrift store stuff, and a lot of stuff we had, like by the time we got it wasn't cool anymore and stuff like that. Like I didn't get our first gaming system that we had in our house growing up was a PS1, but it wasn't until like over a year and a half after the PS1 had already come out. And when we first got it, we didn't even have a memory card. So we just kept replaying the same levels over and over, pressing random buttons, hoping that we did okay. We didn't know how to play any of the games. I remember playing Spyro, and one of my friend's little brothers he didn't want it anymore. And so he gave me WWF SmackDown 2. So me and my sister used to like press these buttons, hoping that we would, hit a really good spot and stuff and win the matches. My sister does not like wrestling, but I tell you, she had impeccable taste. Whenever we would play that game, she would always pick like Kurt Angle, Kane, or Eddie Guerrero. So for a girl that doesn't like wrestling, it's like, damn girl, you got some good taste for wrestling quality and caliber. And I loved being Road Dogg because every time I would accidentally get a good move in and you would hear, "Oh, you didn't know." And my mom would be in the other room and she's like, "Taylor, don't you finish that?" Because we'd be like, "Yo ass better call." So it was great. Hilarious. My sister gets so frustrated. It would be so funny. And we had this really awesome Tetris game. I feel like it was like low-key awesome. And you had like this little archaeologist guy, and he would be walking around back and forth on top of your blocks. And you had this thing above all of your blocks that would slowly come down, and it had like teeth that spun, and it was like this thing that would drop. And if it touched your archaeologist, he would die. And you had to kind of use your blocks to solve the puzzle and get to the bottom, and that there would be like a secret door you could go in to get like further into the pyramid or whatever the case may be, and you'd win. And every time you got 2 or more lines of your blocks completed, it would send that many rows of blocks to the other side. So it was just so cool. We would battle it out with each other for hours. That would probably be one of my top all-time video games, along with Spyro. Because that was like my introduction to video games. I really didn't grow up with video games. And then I'm a super big fan of Mario Party 5 for GameCube. I love that game so much. And then like the Nickelodeon like racing game where you can be like Reptar and SpongeBob and stuff. I always like picking Reptar because I always like to pick Bowser or Koopa Kid in Mario Party. So those are some of my favorite video games, but I have played a ton of different Mario games that I love. I've played a lot of Zelda. I played that Deadpool game. I played Arkham Asylum. I played a lot of different games, but I'm terrible. I'm so laughably terrible at it. Like I can't even succeed at Grand Theft Auto. So, video games and I do not have a great relationship, but I still enjoy them quite a bit. Um, I thought this was a very interesting, multi-level, kind of tiered question, and I really appreciated the sentiment and the personal kind of concern and care behind it. So just a brief little background. This person watched one of my previous Q&A videos recently and remembered me talking about, being so naive when I started in wrestling. I had just pretty much just freshly faced turned 17 when I started wrestling. I was still in high school, didn't have my own car yet, hadn't gone to prom yet, like nothing. Like I was super, super young and little, and like I'd never, yeah, it way too young, way too young. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that. And I talked about, I didn't have the social skills I probably needed because, I was so young. I was sheltered in some ways not. And, I didn't pick up on a lot of social cues in wrestling. I didn't pick up on a lot of different types of things in social environments and never really fit in. I had terrible, self-talk, and I never growing up, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup or anything. Like I was a tomboy. I played all kinds of sports and I was in all kinds of different like after school clubs and activities and things like that. All of my clothes were pretty much from thrift stores. I didn't have like the top of the line cute clothes like all the other girls and stuff. And so I didn't know anything about fashion getting into wrestling. I was very much that awkward girl wearing black and white and torn up fishnet stuff. And, I got grounded for wearing eyeliner and mascara. So I didn't know how to do makeup. I didn't know how to do hair, nothing getting into wrestling, none of it, which is hilarious because people in wrestling and fans look at me and they're like, oh, she's just another pretty face. Oh, she's just a body. So she has this. So she can't wrestle. She's just there because she has this. And it's like, number one, I rock what my mama gave me. Thank you, Mama Hendrix. You're amazing. Number two, I got into wrestling not because I'm like, look at me, look at me. No, I got into wrestling because I love wrestling. Always have, always will. Like, I just fell in love with wrestling. Like that Rick Rude, that, oh gosh, the Mr. Perfect. And I watched I just so much wrestling. I loved it. I couldn't get enough. Anyways, so this person heard my story talking about the things that I, just mentioned now and in more depth on another video with other things. And they asked me if I was autistic because they, I guess, were diagnosed very late in life with autistic. They said they weren't diagnosed as being on the spectrum until they were about 27 years old, and they experienced similar things that I did, and they were hoping that I wouldn't be offended by their question. Honestly, I am not offended at all. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I always want, fans to feel open to share with me. I may not see everything. I am one girl trying to keep up with, over 100,000 fans, but I do my best. I make it a point to interact with fans every single day, whether it's a like, a follow, a comment, a GIF, whatever I can, even just posting, a question out there for other people in the Taeler Army community to interact with, whatever I can do, I'm just all about it. So I am not offended at all with you asking, if there was, a chance that I was autistic. I am not. I was just, a very young, naive girl who everybody that was supposed to be helping me just had their own agendas, basically, so it was sink or swim. It was like being injured and getting thrown, like you're bleeding because you're injured and you're getting thrown into a shark tank and trying to fend off a whole bunch of sharks. That's basically what it was like for me. Except I didn't realize it because I didn't have the social cues. I didn't have the social, skills. And that's actually something, which I didn't realize, that Priscilla Kelly, who's now Gigi Dolan in WWE, she just recently got signed. She spoke about having similar kind of issues in wrestling with, social cues and social skills and being kind of sheltered and stuff. So I related to her in that way. And I'm also a very big advocate for her behind the scenes. She doesn't know that, but I always have been. So I think that's kind of fun and interesting. But no, I am not autistic and I'm not on the spectrum. But I had students when I was a teacher that were. When I was a camp counselor for the YMCA, like it's really funny to think like, kids from ages 4 to 16 or so had me as a camp counselor at one point or another at this camp, at the summer camp. So I think that's kind of cool for them. They probably don't realize it, but for them to be like, oh yeah, Taeler Hendrix was my camp counselor all summer. That's awesome. Taeler Hendrix taught me how to swim. Taeler Hendrix taught me archery. Taeler Hendrix was my belayer when I was on the rock wall. There's like super cool things like that. And those were real things. Like I had to help teach swim. I had to help teach archery. I was certified to teach archery, and I was a certified belayer at one point, and like all kinds of really cool things. And I was already wrestling at that point in time. And one of my favorite summers was actually getting to be a personal aide for two teenagers who had Asperger's. And they were amazing. I still remember them. I don't want to say their names on here, just for privacy reasons. But they were so cool. One of them was just so insanely smart with math, just blew me away. And getting to spend time with them was just so amazing. Like I loved it. I actually liked going to work to see them every day. It was cool. I was their personal buddy, looking out for them, helping them interact with other people, getting them involved in different activities that they might not have pushed themselves to do otherwise. I don't know, just amazing. So I'm not offended by that at all. I'm not somebody who looks at disabilities as disabilities. To me, that I think they're different abilities. And I much prefer that mindset instead of disability. I think, they're differently abled. There's people that have what other people think are disabilities. It's just people that see and approach the world differently because they have to. And it just makes them different. It doesn't make them worse than someone else or worse off than someone else. And there's people, for example, in the deaf community that don't think of being deaf as a disadvantage. It helps them approach life differently, and they think of it almost as a blessing in a way. So for me, I am not offended by your question at all, and I actually appreciate you reaching out to me in your heartfelt way. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I had someone on Twitter, Instagram, and my YouTube channel ask me this, so I'm going to answer this again. It comes up quite a bit, so this is like the only question that I will keep answering because people miss it. No, I am not retired. No, I have not stopped wrestling. No, I am not blackballed. None of that. I am just taking a break from wrestling in the ring only because of the pandemic. I am not retired. I just I don't feel safe right now wrestling during the pandemic, especially with everything that's going on. I want to keep me, my loved ones, and my fans safe. That doesn't mean I haven't had offers. I've had some very enticing offers. It's just I had to turn them down due to circumstances with the pandemic because of travel and being around people, testing, all this other stuff, yeah, I just want to be safe right now. So no, just because I'm not in the ring does not mean I haven't retired. I'm still very active in the wrestling community, writing about wrestling, talking about wrestling, doing a podcast that also talks about wrestling. I will be on other people's podcasts soon. So I have so much going on in my career right now. I am not retired from wrestling. I'm just choosing to do other things during a pandemic. That does not mean I love wrestling any less. Someone asked me on Twitter, what are some of my favorite companies to work for? This is really cool because I actually just wrote a Fightful.com article about one of the companies. So one of my all-time favorite companies is a company that came around for me as an opportunity later on in my career. MPWL, which is now Lucha Patron. And they're actually on, I believe, a channel in Arizona or Arkansas, several places in California. I think a couple on the East Coast, including My Network TV, the CW Network, I think ABC and a couple of ABC affiliates, and some more. I love that because they gave me an opportunity to really expand on my pro wrestling experience and also put me in different aspects to help me grow as a performer and also in charity endeavors. Sabrina is about to crash our party. Hi, sweetie. My cat. And they also really help harness my passion for giving back to communities. And with them, I was able to help provide more than 20,000 meals to families in need through various charities, including Feeding America, as well as other food banks. I also helped, collect and donate funds to for no-kill shelters for pet food and all kinds of stuff. So that's probably one of my all-time favorite companies ever is Lucha Patron. I got to do some really cool stuff and bring out like my spicier, sassier side and stuff. So it was just so much fun. Another company who I actually just recently wrote an article on that will be coming out soon is WWR, also known as Women's Wrestling Revolution. They are an all-women show on the East Coast. They are the sister company to Beyond Wrestling, so they a lot of times have crossovers. I worked for them quite a bit. I was a very big ticket seller for them. I love working for that company. I always felt very good about myself. They gave me an opportunity to not just prove I'm not just a body or looks, that like they gave me an opportunity to wrestle and expand on my own creativity. And I just really love that. And I got to wrestle with a lot of really talented women like Sonia Strong, um, Jordan Grace. I wrestled Lufisto. I briefly wrestled Kimberly, but that was supposed to be a much longer match, but my shoulder was out of the socket. Behind the scenes, after I finished the match with Lufisto, I had to go to the bathroom backstage and like lethal weapon myself to get my shoulder back in. I used like the door jamb of the doors at the bathroom. Awful. So then I had to wrestle Kimberly later in the night. So we cut it like super short and made it very gimmicky with like a chair and stuff. But if you watch that, that's how you safely do a chair spot. That thing was so safe. Pros we are. I got to wrestle Barbie Hayden there, Twisted Sisters, just so many amazing people, tagging with Alicia Edwards. So a lot of really cool, really awesome experiences. So they were also one of my favorite companies. Down in Texas, I got to wrestle Barbie Hayden at this really cool place that I don't really remember the name of now. Is it River City Wrestling? Something like that. I think Hernandez was the booker for them at one point. I had a blast. They were super fun, very supportive. I had a crazy huge line of fans who all wanted my stuff and all wanted to help donate to my charities and stuff. They were super cool. I had a lot of fun in Queens of Combat. They put belts on me and like pushed me and to grow and stuff. And I was really thankful for that too. It gave me extra TV time and stuff. So I'm very thankful for that. Overall, like even the bad stuff I wouldn't change just because it made me the person I am talking to you today. So even though there was a lot of stuff that really sucked and was awful and gut-wrenching and heartbreaking, and it made me the person I am. And when you fight so hard to be who you are and to be free with your authenticity, you can't necessarily go in a DeLorean and change something. One, because that doesn't really exist, I don't think. But number two, it's because you can't really guarantee that you'll be the same person. So I fought really hard to be me. And so I don't think I would change it. And also, if I did change it, that might mean that I'm wishing that on somebody else. And that's something I definitely wouldn't do. I do not want that kind of karma. um, Another person on my YouTube channel asked me what were my earliest memories of wrestling on television. I do have this brief memory of my cousin. My cousin would have made a killer wrestler, by the way. He's like one of the only wrestling fans in my entire family. And he still watches wrestling. So he got to see me when I was on my gut check. He saw me in Ring of Honor. He saw me in WWE. So it was kind of really cool to have him in the background cheering for me. But he's like 6 foot something, 200 and something pounds. Like the guy is huge, super tall. I'm like one of the shorter people in my family at 5'7", which is hilarious. Like I'm the little one that's like, can you reach that on the top shelf for me? But I remember I was a little tiny Taylor, and he was babysitting me for my mother to go out one day, and he let me stay up past my bedtime for a little bit, and he was turning on a Tough Enough. I don't know if that's the one with Jackie Gata or not, but that would be the earliest memory that I have of wrestling, but I don't really remember what it was other than the fact that I know it was Tough Enough. Um, But I do have memories of one of my friends that I played softball with. She would tape Raw, SmackDown, Velocity, Sunday Night Heat, and Confidential. And she would tape them onto VHSs. So when I slept over her house, I could sneak and watch wrestling because I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling. And I remember seeing Chyna and Lita and all these people. But my most vivid memory is one that I've talked about for years in various interviews and podcasts, was the debut of Chris Jericho in the WWF when his Titantron hits and it's the countdown. Ding, ding. Dun, dun. And then he finally comes out, the whole like roof blows off the arena, the Rock's in the ring sputtering and pissed, and you know here comes Chris Jericho with his like ponytail thing, and he's like, I'm here to save the WWF, and the Rock's like, who's that the WWF needs saving, like, and everybody's like, oh. That I remember, but I don't think it was live. I think it was like a recap re-showing it, because this was Christmas Eve that I saw it. So I know that I don't believe that, you know, it had to have been a re-showing. But yeah, that was just crazy. It was just so crazy cool. I remember that's probably my first like real legit, like I vividly remember how I felt watching it. Another person on YouTube asked me if I saw WrestleMania 30, where the streak of The Undertaker was broken by Brock Lesnar. I saw it, but I don't really remember much about it other than the fact that I was upset that the streak was broken by Brock Lesnar, and the fact that I thought his match with Edge and Shawn Michaels and even CM Punk was better. So I don't really remember much about that other than being like sad. I was sad that it was over. Another person on my Twitter asked me, what do I do? What are some things that I do in my spare time that low-key people don't know about? So I don't have a lot of spare time, but when I do, well, the cat's out of the bag. I write a lot in my spare time, obviously, because, I'm now a published author. Uh, but that was something that I did low-key for years and years and years. This blanket right here is evidence of stuff I do. I crochet blankets and things for like pets, and I've donated stuff like that to no-kill shelters. I want to start doing that for like babies in the NICU, but there's already a lot of people that do that, and I kind of don't want to take that away. And you have to use like very specialty yarn for that because of immune systems in the baby's skin and stuff in the NICU. But this is something I do. I make blankets. I love board games. So anytime I get to sit down and play like cards or board games, I'm like all about it. I actually collect vintage games. So I have a Candyland from like the 1940s. I have a really old Dr. Seuss Green Eggs and Ham board game. I have paper dolls from the 1960s. I also have, there was a really hit game show, I think in the 50s or 60s called Name That Tune. I own the board game, the vintage board game. So I like to collect things like vintage books, movies, and records and board games and toys and stuff. Um, What are some other things? Oh, I farm. I like farming in my spare time. I have chickens, which I've briefly kind of mentioned before. That was something that briefly Liv Morgan and I bonded over. It's just having chickens. I love chickens. And I rescue animals. So I rescue, foster, and adopt animals. Every animal that I have, all of my babies, they are all rescue animals. They've come from fire zones. They've come from, essentially death row to be, scheduled to be euthanized and things like that. So that's something I'm also very passionate about. If you are a fan of mine over the last like 6 years, you would have seen me advertising that I used to be on Celeb VM, and I donated proceeds from that to no-kill shelters. I also at one point was collecting sweatshirts from fans and from other wrestlers, and I turned them into pet beds for no-kill shelters. So I like to just do a lot of stuff with my hands. I like to sew. I have a sewing machine. I like to crochet. I made this little plaque behind me. It says hello, and it has like black roses and stuff. So I'm just very hands-on and very artsy and crafty. So I write. I like to play games and crochet. I love working with animals and just working on charity projects and stuff. So that's a lot of the stuff I do in my spare time. I also write music for bands and stuff like that, along with, being a writer. So I like to stay busy. My grandmother used to say idle hands are the devil's workshop. And I guess I heard that so much before she died when I was little that I kind of memory. Somebody on my YouTube channel mentioned a jacket spot that I had in a match against somebody at Lucha Patron. And they wanted to know what the inspiration behind that was. Okay, so the jacket spot they're referring to is this girl is just talking tons of trash on a microphone. And I'm just like, uh-huh. I got you, girl. And I briefly turn around while she's just talking smack on the mic, and I'm taking off my super epically awesome goth looking studded leather jacket, and I turn around and I get super close to her, and I'm like talking trash back to her without even having the mic. And then the next thing she knows, I have the jacket over her. She's bent over, and I'm just wailing on her, wailing on her. I introduced her that night to what a hockey fight is, basically, because I'm such a huge hockey fan growing up. Like, I'm a huge Bruins fan, huge diehard Bruins fan. My favorite all-time player is Cam Neely, who's also my mother's favorite player. And so I was just super stoked to do a hockey fight, and that's like my thing now. I've done that other times too. Like when I had like a long detachable train, I remember at OVW, I took it off and I actually used Lady Tapa's train for this spot, but then I took her train that she used to take off and I jumped on her back and had it over her and was wailing on her like this, like clubbing her to the front and on the back and stuff. So anytime I can pull out that spot, I always do. I remember trying to do that spot with Mandy Leon at the time, but she didn't know what it was at the time. And then when I told her about it, we were going to do it, and my train got stuck on my gear. So like the clasp like wouldn't come off. So then I had to nix it at the last second, and I just start wailing on her without it. But that would have been the ECW arena would have popped crazy huge if I would have been able to pull it off, but it got stuck, the clasp. And they briefly caught me struggling with it on camera before they turned to the jib cam, who did like a pan around the arena to show the crowd going crazy. So that was the inspiration for that. And it was so awesome. All the Lucha Patron fans went nuts when I did that. It was awesome. So awesome. That girl that I did that to is a champ, by the way. She learned all the stuff she did that night the day of that show. She is not like trained to wrestle. She learned all of that stuff the day of. Super pro. Um, Another fan asked me if I remember a spot in WWE in 2005 when Victoria and other WWE divas, I guess, were in a bikini contest, and she, I guess, low blowed and beat up Jerry the King Lawler. I do not. I probably saw it, honestly, because they know that I'm a huge Victoria fan. I love her to death, and that's why they asked me the question. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. But I'm not against bikini contests, but I'm not for them. I remember being in some and I just hated it, did not like it, but they were trying to do like a throwback at that developmental time to like the Attitude Era, I guess. I'm not a fan of them, but I'm not going to, be upset with people for doing them, to each their own, basically. Like I said earlier, I'm not a hater. But I do love me some Victoria. She was really huge inspiration for me. I loved watching her wrestle. I loved Molly Holly, Trish Stratus, Jazz, Lita. I even love Tori Wilson. Like I remember going through puberty and being so disappointed when I did not look like Tori Wilson. I was just so heartbroken that I did not look like Tori Wilson. I thought that Great American Bash advertisement and poster she's on, I thought she was like the most beautiful woman in the world. I was just like, oh, I want to look like that someday. So such a beautiful woman, and she's so nice. I remember reaching out to her after her Hall of Fame speech, which I identified with almost every single word that she uttered. It was absolutely amazing. It was like she was in my head, and it was such a huge uplift and inspiration. And then she like responded back to me in the message, and I just thought that was absolutely amazing because she didn't have to. I'm only Taeler Hendrix, she's Tori Wilson, so it's like but yeah, I think she's amazing as well. I think the women, at that time, they did the best they could to continue to execute on what they were given and prove that they were capable of more. And that's what happened. If they all failed, we wouldn't have the women's wrestling that we had today because people wanted that to fail. So that's why they couldn't fail. If women's wrestling continuously failed, you wouldn't have the women that like main evented. You wouldn't, you know what I mean? You wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have had these women wrestling at WrestleMania and all this other stuff. You wouldn't have a women's battle royal now. So in my opinion, I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I don't hate on anybody that does it. It's just not for me. But I do think that they did the best they could, and they also elevated it. Like, thank you. I think we should be saying thank you more to that generation and also the generations that came before them, because in my opinion, the women's wrestling revolution has been happening for decades. It hasn't just happened in the last 10 years. It's been happening since, Princess Victoria. It's been happening since Velvet McIntyre and Wendy Richter and the Glamour Girls and the Jumping Bomb Angels and Rockin' Robin and Sherry Martel. It's been happening for a very, very long time. And I think that those women don't get enough due. They don't get enough credit for, how they paved the way for women like me and other women, So I don't think the women's wrestling revolution that's happening now would necessarily exist if it didn't have the groundwork set and the grassroots done with women like that. And getting to have somebody mentor and not sponsor me, but support me like Princess Victoria does. It's just been So amazing. You know, the invaluable advice and support she's given me over the last few years has been invaluable. So that is pretty much all of the questions this week. We had quite a few. Keep them coming. I will definitely see them if you comment below on these videos. If you comment on Twitter and Instagram, there's a chance I might not see them. So definitely comment here. Share with your friends. Tell them to join in the fun. I will have brand new Taylor's Tiny Kitchen episodes for you soon, as well as more clips and updates. And don't forget to subscribe for my podcast on Realm Network with russosbrand.com. The monthly subscription costs less than a grande coffee at most places, and you get so much content, including full episodes of Talks with Taeler Hendrix. I'm going to have some brand new guests coming soon, like Heather Monroe, a former NFL cheerleader, and so many other people. So yay! Don't forget to check out both of my books on Amazon. It's Not Easy Being a Sloth by Taeler Hendrix, and A Fish with a Wish is Trish by Taeler Hendrix. And per the article of mine in Yahoo Finance, I was super stoked to be featured twice for them. They talked about my upcoming book, Nosy Rosie and the Secret Surprise. That is hitting the shelves super soon, guys. It's about an elephant named Rosie who goes through this self-discovery adventure of who she is, because she hates secrets and is always finding her trunk in everybody else's business, until she realizes that the biggest secret of all is who Rosie is and what Rosie wants in life. So I think that's, a story that we can all be inspired by and learn from. And like I said in the Yahoo Finance article, the inspiration for that story actually started in 2012 when I was in Impact Wrestling. And, I lost sight of that story for a while and then started picking it up again in 2015 when I went through an experience where I was told no, when it meant the life-changing for me to receive a yes. And that's kind of when this story all started falling into place for me to finish it. And several years later, here I am today being featured in Yahoo Finance for it. It's amazing. It's just a real test of fortitude and not giving up and learning to bet on yourself when nobody else will, and to cheer for yourself in the silence. To me, it's really all indicative of what I always say, and I say it in the article as well when they interviewed me. It's all you need is love, guts, and gumption. Self-love to realize that you and your dreams matter. Guts to go after those dreams without sacrificing your integrity and learning to bet on yourself when no one will. And the gumption to see it through without having to change who you are. I think that's like the biggest thing. So I hope I can end this episode with giving you guys just some awesome motivation, and be sure to get your questions in for next week's Q&A. Thank you, guys.